I had to talk about a story that's very, very important. And albeit indirectly, it involves Caitlin Clark, the Department of Justice, and quite possibly the President of the United States himself. Somebody got to say it, so I'm going to say it. Ms. Clark's targeting may reflect a culture of disparate treatment, and the evidence provides reasonable cause for a federal probe into potential civil rights violations.
Stephen A. Smith just dropped a bombshell that should terrify every WNBA executive. He's not just talking about bad calls anymore. He's demanding federal investigators look into what's happening to Caitlin Clark. We're talking about the same Caitlin Clark who single-handedly drove 601% growth in merchandise and tripled team values. The woman who brought 1.29 million All-Star votes, but somehow ranked 9th among guards by her own peers. Something stinks here, and Stephen A. thinks the government needs to step in. If you think the government needs to step in, comment, protect Caitlin Clark. Let's go.
The golden child in her second year in the league, who was top 4 in MVP voting last year, the assist leader last year, a galvanizing talent that has done wonders for the NBA. If she is seen to be physically getting abused on a basketball court in a way that is such a clear and flagrant discrepancy compared to what happens to others, that man is not going to say something?
You want to know what makes this whole situation absolutely infuriating? Let's start with the money. Caitlin Clark didn't just join the WNBA. She became its economic engine overnight, generating revenue numbers that should have made her untouchable. The data is staggering. Exponential growth in merchandise sales, tripled Fever viewership, doubled Total League viewership, tripled team value, and League Pass subscriptions up 366%. These aren't small bumps. These are transformational changes that leagues dream about.
Caitlin Clark has done for the women's NBA what Michael Jordan once did for the NBA. Made it more valuable, watchable, and marketable. Instead of protecting its transformative star, the league's leadership ignores the relentless targeting of Ms. Clark, treating its greatest asset as if she were a PR headache. That approach could turn into a legal liability for the WNBA.
Clark brought in endorsement deals worth over $11 million and caused WNBA app engagement to spike 613%. Numbers the WNBA hadn't seen since forever. We're talking about a player who single-handedly shifted the entire financial landscape of women's basketball. Every metric you can imagine showed massive growth tied directly to her presence.
Since she joined the league last year, Ms. Clark's impact has been seismic. Merchandise sales soared 601%. Indiana Fever viewership jumped 170%. The team's value tripled. League Pass subscriptions climbed 366%. App engagement rose 613%. And her endorsements
But this is where the story takes a dark turn. Instead of protecting their golden goose, the league allowed her to absorb punishment at unprecedented rates. The statistical evidence is damning. Clark took 17% of all flagrant fouls last season. That's double the rate of any other player in the league. Let that sink in for a second.
The star player of the league is not being protected. Rebecca Lobo, analyst, ESPN. What does she say? Every single one of those plays against Caitlin Clark has been a foul.
Think about what this means. The player bringing in the most money is getting hit the hardest, and somehow officials are missing calls left and right. You're watching defenders take cheap shots at the woman who tripled your team values. You're seeing flagrant contact that would draw immediate whistles for veteran players get ignored when it happens to Clark. The pattern becomes impossible to ignore when you look at the footage. Hard fouls that should have been flagrant ones. Obvious targeting that gets waved off. Late hits that draw nothing but continued play. The most valuable player in the league was being treated like a practice dummy while officials looked the other way.
By the way, when she was out for the All-Star weekend this year, because she was hurt, by the way, because of the roughhouse tactics all of those folks alluded to, the ratings dropped 36%. They still had over 2 million views, but they had over 3 million last year. It dropped because she wasn't playing. Now, I told y'all, Candace Parker tried to tell y'all, Rebecca Lobo is trying to tell y'all, the goose that lays the golden eggs, the tide that lifts all boats.
This isn't coincidence. It's a pattern that reveals how badly the WNBA has mismanaged its most valuable asset. When your biggest revenue generator is absorbing double the flagrant fouls of anyone else, something is seriously wrong with your system. The question becomes, how did a league allow jealousy and resentment to override basic business sense? How do you watch someone transform your entire economic model and then fail to protect them from systematic targeting?
Do you know what Gino Auriemma said? He said she's being targeted. I don't remember when Michael Jordan came into the league, guys looking to go out and beat him up. Only the Detroit Pistons were looking to beat him up. And then after that, the New York Knicks with Pat Riley and Ewing and Anthony Mason and Xavier McDaniels and Charles Oakley and all of these guys. The John Starks of the world, Derek Harpers of the world eventually. Stuff like that.
Stephen A. Smith didn't just criticize the WNBA. He opened the door to something that should terrify Commissioner Kathy Engelberg and every league executive. When Stephen A. goes from sports commentary to suggesting federal intervention, you know the situation has reached a breaking point that goes way beyond basketball.
Ms. Clark's targeting may reflect a culture of disparate treatment, and the evidence provides reasonable cause for a federal probe into potential civil rights violations. Am I making it up now? Remember I said this months ago. Remember I talked about people being jealous. The Cheryl Swoops of the world and others. Remember I pointed that stuff out? Remember I talked about the rough housing?
The Wall Street Journal published an explosive op-ed arguing that the federal government should investigate Clark's treatment as a civil rights issue. This wasn't some random blogger making noise. This was one of the most respected publications in America, putting the WNBA on notice. The piece didn't mince words about what they saw happening to the league's biggest star.
This would mirror the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission investigation into the Erica Hamby's pregnancy discrimination claims against the WNBA and her team. Congress and Labor and Justice Departments would be justified in examining the facts.
Stephen A. Smith backed this up completely, stating on air that federal investigators have legitimate grounds for getting involved. He's not talking about bad calls anymore. He's talking about systematic patterns that could violate workplace protection laws. When someone with his platform and legal knowledge says there's a case, people listen.
You don't think Caitlin Clark could become an issue of national, potentially international, and definitely federal proportions? You don't think so?
We're not talking about sports commentary anymore. We're talking about potential Justice Department investigations and congressional oversight. You know what happens when federal agencies start asking questions about internal communications and decision-making processes? Everything changes overnight. Every email gets scrutinized. Every meeting gets reviewed. Every policy decision gets examined under a microscope.
Senator Jim Banks' 2024 letter to WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelberg demanded answers on Ms. Clark's treatment. Congress and the administration should demand answers from WNBA leaders, investigate officiating and internal league communications, hold hearings, and insist on real reforms. This is in a Wall Street Journal. The Labor Department should review the league protocols for workplace safety. If evidence shows discrimination or retaliation, the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division must act. If leaders remain inert, Congress should reconsider the WNBA's special privileges, including its antitrust and broadcast considerations. Checking referees' work with NBA-style last 2-minute reports would be a meaningful first step toward building trust.
The argument centers on workplace safety violations and disparate treatment, the same legal frameworks used in major civil rights cases. Federal investigators don't care about basketball rivalries or veteran player dynamics. They care about whether someone's workplace rights are being violated through systematic targeting and inadequate protection.
But 17 flagrant fouls have been called against people for beating up on Caitlin Clark. That's practically double what's happened for any other player in the league. They have evidence to say she's being treated unfairly.
Think about what this means for league operations. Federal investigators would have subpoena power to examine referee communications, front office decisions, and internal policies about player protection. They could demand explanations for why the league's most valuable player absorbed double the flagrant fouls of anyone else. They could review whether the WNBA created a hostile work environment through inadequate response to obvious targeting.
That was the first salvo. I'm not asking you. This is Stephen A, baby. I'm telling you. It's the first salvo. It's not an accident that this is coming shortly after the WNBA players foolishly wore those shirts. As Candace Parker pointed out, pay us what you owe us, antagonizing the league, with pending CBA negotiations coming.
When federal investigators start asking questions about systematic targeting and hostile work environments, the WNBA's problems become much bigger than basketball. The league that should have been celebrating its biggest star instead created a situation that might require government intervention to fix. That's not just embarrassing. It's potentially catastrophic for future operations and league credibility.
Mystics co-owner Sheila Johnson questioned Ms. Clark's 2024 Time Athlete of the Year recognition. Ms. Clark shattered fan vote records with 1.29 million all-star votes, yet ranked only 9th among guards on the player ballot.
Want to see jealousy in action? Look at what happened with the all-star voting. It's the perfect example of how Clark's own peers tried to diminish her impact. The fans spoke loud and clear about who they wanted to see, but the players had a very different message to send. Clark received 1.29 million all-star votes from fans. That's not just a good number. That's a record-breaking tsunami of support that should have made her the undisputed face of the event. These weren't casual votes either. Fans were paying attention, engaging with the league, and putting their money where their mouth was through merchandise and ticket sales.
Dick Vitale, when the 1.29 million all-star votes came in for Caitlin Clark, yet she was ranked 9th among guards on a player ballot. Quote, absolutely pure jealousy that the WNBA players voted Caitlin Clark the 9th best guard. Someday they will realize what she has done for all of the players in the WNBA. Chartered planes, increase in salaries, sold out crowds, improved TV ratings, etc. And they ain't lying. They ain't lying.
But when the player voting results came out, something shocking happened. Clark was ranked 9th among guards by her own peers.
9th.
You're telling me the player who brought millions of new eyeballs to the league somehow doesn't deserve top recognition from other players? The woman who transformed the entire economic landscape gets ranked behind players most casual fans couldn't even name. This voting disparity wasn't just disrespectful. It was a coordinated message. When fans overwhelmingly support someone, but players actively rank them low, that tells you everything about internal league dynamics. The contrast between fan support and peer rejection shows exactly what Stephen A. Smith and others have been pointing out about WNBA culture.
And those players that are talking about their value, what's going to be held against you is looking at your value when Caitlin Clark is not playing. And when you see a precipitous drop off, it ain't going to be about y'all, it's going to be about her. Even if it's wrong, even if it's unfair, that's how it's going to go down. And when it goes down like that, that's exactly the kind of ammunition president will use to his advantage as he so sees fit.
The numbers don't lie about what was happening here. You had the most popular player in league history getting snubbed by the very people who should have been thanking her for the increased attention and revenue. These same players were benefiting from the elevated contracts and media coverage that Clark's popularity created. Yet, they couldn't bring themselves to acknowledge her impact. The All-Star voting exposed the ugly truth about league priorities. While fans embraced Clark's transformational impact on women's basketball, veteran players were actively working to keep her from receiving the recognition she earned. This wasn't just about basketball rankings anymore. It was about control, gatekeeping, and a refusal to let Clark reshape the established order that had existed for years. Here's what the WNBA executives don't want to admit. Their entire future depends on keeping Caitlin Clark happy and protected. Clark's 2025 return represents a crossroads moment. Either the league evolves to support its biggest star, or they risk losing the golden goose that saved their economics.
Some of it, Caitlin Clark brings on herself because she talks, she chirps, she antagonizes. That's how Angel Reese became so famous, because Angel Reese clapped back at her the way she was clapping back at people leading into that national championship loss to LSU a few years back when she was at Iowa. And that's how Angel Reese became.
The television contracts, merchandise deals, and sponsor commitments Clark generated aren't one-time windfalls. They're multi-year agreements betting on her continued success and safety. Nike didn't sign her to that massive deal, expecting her to get beaten up every night. ESPN didn't increase their WNBA coverage to watch officials ignore flagrant fouls against the league's most popular player.
The players were making a case of what they deserve and what they earn, and right around the time that happens, now you got the Justice Department and the Trump administration being egged on to pay attention to this issue so it will get addressed. And when you have Senator Jim Banks, a senator, writing a letter to the WNBA commissioner demanding answers on Caitlin Clark's treatment.
The Indiana Fever's front office has made it clear they won't tolerate the same treatment in 2025. They've invested too much in building around Clark to watch her get targeted again. You think they're going to sit quietly while other teams take cheap shots at their franchise player? Not a chance. Look at the roster moves they've made. Sophie Cunningham joining the team wasn't just about basketball skills. It was about adding someone who will protect Clark on the court. Lexi Hull, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell have all shown they'll stand up for their teammate. If federal investigators actually open cases, the WNBA could face sponsors pulling out, networks renegotiating contracts, and a public relations nightmare that makes current controversies look minor. Corporate America doesn't want to be associated with workplace safety violations or systematic targeting. They'll walk away faster than you can imagine.
Treatment towards this golden goose, a spectacular talent that is one of the preeminent futures, if not the future face of the WNBA, if she isn't considered that already. And Caitlin Clark, who also happens to be white, playing in the Midwest, with evidence of unfair treatment.
Clark holds all the leverage now. She transformed the entire economic landscape of women's basketball in one season. The league needs her more than she needs them. 2025 will prove whether the WNBA learned to protect their most valuable asset or if outside intervention becomes necessary to ensure her safety and success. The WNBA had a choice. Embrace the player who transformed their entire economic landscape, or let jealousy and resentment destroy the best thing that ever happened to women's basketball. They chose wrong, and now federal investigators might have to step in to protect Caitlin Clark from her own league and from the jealous WNBA veterans. The league can either evolve or face the consequences of their mismanagement. If you think the government needs to step in, comment "Protect Caitlin Clark." Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next.